Why is my statement of financial position out of balance? In this lesson, we'll learn how to figure out what is causing a set of financial statements, in particular a statement of financial position, to be out of balance. For my example, I will use an actual set of financial statements that are out of balance, and by the end of the lesson we should be able to figure out why the statement of financial position is out of balance. The process for an entire set of financial statements is to get your balance sheet in balance first and then work on each of the other statements. So this is the first of a video on a series of videos focusing on just the statement of financial position. As a point of reference, I'm using the 2014 edition of the financial statements as my teaching tool, but what I show you will work also just as well with the out-of-date financial statements many sites are still using. I've extracted the example of the financial statements. Notice that my total assets are $6,358,321 and my total liabilities and net assets are $9,294,001. Out of balance sheet. Okay. I have, to be honest with you, I have no idea what's causing this lack of balance. Our first step is to try to narrow down where the problem is occurring. If we look over at the balance sheet, if we look at the plan fund, we see that it is in balance. My previous year's balance for last year are also in balance. And so at this point I know that my combined figures are out of balance. Since my plan fund is in balance, I know that the problem lies completely within my operating fund. By the way, the principles we learn here would be equally applicable to a plan fund or even the prior year. My strategy for fixing these problems is to get the statement of financial position in balance, then move on to figure out why the other statements may not be tallying back to the statement of financial position. And in this video, we're just working on the statement of financial position. Now I want to come up with a little trial balance to help me with my investigation. So I will open a new worksheet right here in Q&A Executive. Of course, I could use a regular Microsoft Excel Q&A worksheet, but if I build it in Q&A Executive, I can do what I feel like is easier and more careful drill downs. When I open a new worksheet, I will open a new worksheet at the bottom of the directory here, and it shows up in the work area of Q&A. And just starting someplace, let's say cell A1, I build a summary report query, and you can look now at the filters I've set in my summary report query. The product is Sun Systems 5 and 6. I've hit the right business unit, ADA in my case. The table is the ledger. I'm looking at all accounts. The accounting period is important. I will put in 1844-001 to the balance sheet date, okay, of 2014-012. And I'm going to put in this particular case, I'm going to bring up the fund analysis code, okay, L3 analysis code. I will bring it up because I know that my problem is in the operating fund, so I will filter so I only get operating fund accounts, narrowing it down a little bit. And in my output, I'm going to output the account code and the description and the base amount. Account code, description, and the base amount. When we run this report, we get a nice little tidy trial balance. And of course, the first thing we want to do is to make sure that our trial balance is in zero, because we're balancing back to this trial balance. If it's not in zero, we have big problems. One common problem with causing your trial balance to be out of balance is that you might have used a memo account, and you want to make sure that you put a filter in so memo accounts are not brought in. Also, so if you don't have memo account problems and you have a trial balance that is not in balance, you probably need to contact support. Now I have this nice little list of accounts and their values. I highlight all of these accounts, right click them, and copy the figures and paste them into a new Excel worksheet. And so now we have two trial balances in play, and so in order to keep it straight, we'll call the one in executive the executive trial balance, and the one in Excel we'll call the Excel trial balance. Now we can go back to our statement of financial position and trace our numbers over to the Excel trial balance. So the idea is here is to find trace all the numbers on my trial balance to the statement of financial position, and all of the numbers on my statement of financial position, I trace them to the trial balance. So we're isolating the problem, and for our class purposes, we'll start at the top and work down. And so I'm going to start with cash. Okay, so I put my cursor on cash and drill down by account code and description, and we'll now get a listing of all of the accounts that make up the cash account. Now, right from the start, we have a slight little thing that's complicating in the new financial statements. According to the accounting manual, cash is divided into two places on my balance sheet: the cash and cash equivalents and the cash and the trust funds. And so in order to do that, we need to make sure that the cash and cash equivalents and the cash line and the cash and the trust fund lines equals my total cash. And so we drill down on those numbers, okay, and we look at our cash accounts. All right, and I select the rows. I'm selecting the rows of all of my cash accounts, the ones that start with the 10. I highlight those and right click and copy, and then I'm going to paste them on the Excel trial balance, taking care to align the accounts that I'm copying with the accounts that are already on my trial balance. Then I'm comparing the values on my Excel trial balance with the figures I just pasted in. Now, in order to do this in a handy little way, I'm going to write an Excel formula subtracting the figures in my drill down from the figures that I just pasted in with the figures on my trial balance. Okay, so in this example here, the formula is we're subtracting from cell C3 to F3, okay, from the two numbers, and you see that we will get a 0. And when I see that my formula seems to be working right, I pull it down and copy it for the rest of the cash accounts, and I could see that my cash accounts that I have copied over, okay, cash accounts that I've copied over and compared to my trial balance perfectly match the numbers on cash that on my trial balance compared to the ones I've copied over. Right away, I could see that I'm with zeros in all those figures, and I'm doing okay. So now I will go down to my next account. Okay, pardon me. What I like to do is then highlight the numbers on the trial balance that I have tied down, and highlight them and mark them with yellow to indicate that everything is currently reconciled with those accounts. Okay, so I'll repeat this process with the next figure on my balance sheet, and in the class example here it will be investments. Okay, so I highlight, I put my cursor on cell D11, my investments, and I drill down, and I get a total of $35,000 in my drill down, and I copy and paste them onto my trial balance, aligning them with my investment accounts. Okay. And then I pull down my difference calculator of 0 and pull it down, and you see I get 0. And so far so good. I get zeros for all of the investment accounts, so that the items on my statement of financial position has been reconciled against my trial balance. So now we'll repeat the process, and what I'd like to do is skip accounts receivable and go down to notes and notes receivable, and give you one more illustration. Okay, so I'll put my cursor on notes and notes receivable. I drill down on notes and notes receivable by account code and description, and I get 78,966, and I copy that over and paste it on my notes and notes receivable, and pull down my difference calculator for the notes and notes receivable accounts, and you see I've got 0 there, and I've got it tied down. And we could do the same, drill down with inventory and prepaid expenses. So we'll on the statement of financial position, so we'll drill down by account code and description, get the balance and copy it over, and we get $16,512.30, and we'll copy the figures over from the drill down and paste them in the trial balance and pull down the difference calculator. So you continue working down the balance sheet until you've done all of your assets and liabilities. I skipped the accounts receivable just because it gets a little bit complicated visually to watch it happening, but the process with accounts receivable are exactly the same. You will run your statement of financial position, not hiding the hidden rows, the queries up at the top. If you watch the financial statement videos, you know what I'm talking about. You run it so you can see the details of the calculation of accounts receivable, and drill down on the details. And the details will have numerical accounts, and it will have lettered accounts, and you have to cut and paste them all over to the trial balance where they belong. So it's a little more complicated to see, but it's actually the exact same process we've been following, except for the cutting and pasting from the drill down on the statement of financial position. Cutting from there and pasting into the trial balance looks complicated, but it's actually exactly the same as I've illustrated so far. So we've finished going through all of our assets and liabilities, and that leaves us now with the net asset section. My experience has been that there are a lot of problems with the net asset section, and so I often will start there first instead of starting to work with cash. Let's be clear on what the numbers on the trial balance represent. Since we started our accounting period range at 1844, the numbers represent each transaction since then. So the power and light value of 17 million or 17,885 is an accumulation stretching over all those periods. And so what we'll do is we will, on our trial balance, highlight all of the 5,000 accounts, 6,000, 7,000, 8,000, and we'll highlight all the accounts that start with 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Okay? And we can look at the bottom in Excel and see the total of those accounts that are highlighted, and we can compare the total to our net assets, okay, of 5,380,773, and we see that we have a difference. If we calculate the difference between the number on our trial balance, 2,445,092.79, and the number on our statement of financial position, 5,380,773, we get 2,935,680. And if we calculate the amount that we're out of balance, we discover we're out of balance for the same amount. So we've narrowed down our problem. We know that the problem exists in the net assets. So let's try to figure out what is causing the problem. First thing I will do is highlight the three net asset figures on my statement of financial position and do a drill down by account code and account description. Okay, I'll take my drill down of the three elements of my net assets and copy it over into a blank spreadsheet over in Excel. Next, I'll add the rows so I can get the total for each of the accounts. Finally, I will take my figures that are on my trial balance Excel worksheet and copy them over to my net asset worksheet, aligning the accounts perfectly, and to determine hopefully I lined them up perfectly, and to determine if there is an account that is being picked up incorrectly by my statement of financial position. Next, I'll write a formula that compares the sum of my query with the trial balance balances and looks for any account that doesn't reconcile back and forth between the statement of financial position and the trial balance. So I'll write this formula, pull the formula down so I can run this comparison, and finally try to identify any account that is on my trial balance that didn't make it to a statement of financial position. And you can see as I pull down the calculating row here, column, you'll see that I have an account that aren't two accounts that aren't lining up quite right. Something's not right, and I see that I need to realign my transfer between functions a little bit, between resources account a little bit. I'll copy that down and isolate that this account 962110 is not showing up on the statement of financial position. It's on my trial balance, but it's not on my statement of financial position. And so I can tell that for some reason this account 962110 is not making it over to my statement of financial position. So next we need to figure out what's gone wrong. So I'm going to go back to my statement of financial position and change the design view and take a peek at my three net asset accounts. And I can see that things are actually looking pretty good. I'm going to check the definition, the criteria definition for these accounts by highlighting all three of those cells, right-clicking, hitting Define Criteria, and I can see the filters on that on those three, and you can see they're all doing the exact same thing because they're of the white. And we have the A ledger, the same periods, and we're pulling from all the 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and accounts and in Fund 10. So the only difference is what analysis code is making up what is being used in each of the three different cells. Okay, so we have the UFTF and the first one and so forth. So I'm going to go back over to my summary link for each of these three and take a peek, and you can see that the first of the three items is filtered by UFTF. The second of the three items are filtered by UFNT. and the third is by allocated funds, AFs, all the AFs. So the only difference in these three figures involved the resource analysis dimension. And so it looks to me like those filters are right. And so what we now need to do is to go back to the executive trial balance, the one that we used at the very beginning of this presentation, and we'll drill down on that one, and we'll go to the cell that has the problems. We'll find account 962110, and we'll drill down on that by the resource dimension to see what categories of resource dimensions were used here. Okay. And this is in Sun Systems version 6. Analysis dimension 1 is the resource dimension. We'll drill down on that dimension, and we will see that that account has been tagged with a resource code of UFUN. UFUN. Well, none of the three are designed to pick up UFUN, so something is wrong. Either one of those filters should pick up the UFUN, or the transaction is wrong and shouldn't have been coded UFUN. So we'll do our research, and I just happen to know that UFUN is only really allowed in the plant fund, and so this was coded with what could be considered a improper resource analysis code for Fund 10. And so we'll go back over to analysis account allocation and change this UFUN to what it ought to be and to the correct analysis code for this transaction, and run the financial statements again to see if it now is working correctly. And so I believe this is a simple coding error, and we continue to investigate until we get it right. So thank you for listening, and I hope this is helpful to you. Next video on this topic is how to balance the income statement, but I will tell you that it's just about the same as what we've just seen. So with that in mind, we'll continue working through this series. Thank you very much, and see you next time.